Hello folks, welcome to version 2.15. Ooh baby, and welcome to gear shifting. There was our first shift. So folks, this video for you today is going to be hopefully a bit of a walkthrough on version 2.15 of the ZombieVerter VCU Firmware. Now you might wonder why I'm doing this while driving the land yacht at the same time. That's because the week just gone out that I'd planned to make you a nice boring talking video and me sitting in front of the computer and so on didn't exactly go to plan. Ended up doing a lot of DIY. So I've got a drive to do this morning, and what I'm going to try and do is kill a few birds with one land yacht. So we're going to talk through version 2.15, some of the probably the main features. And this vehicle, BMW E39 2001, is equipped with the Lexus GS 450h drivetrain. And this is probably the one that's going to have the most, I guess, the features will have the most impact on. So there's a couple of things we'll hit just before we jump into the actual features and all that kind of stuff. First thing is I really want to say thank you to the people that have really in the last few weeks and months came on board to help with the VCU project, and that includes a lot of things, not just writing software and doing testing, but Greg from Good Enough Garage has really been outdoing himself making basically the documentation project for the VCU, and there'll be a link in the video description to his channel where he's putting out a whole dose of videos that are really aimed at a user's perspective for how to wire things up and perform configuration. So if you're new to the project, very much recommend that you head over to his channel and have a look at some of that stuff. Secondly, in terms of a lot of these software features that we're going to be talking through, oh, there's a shift down. Today, special thanks definitely needs to go to Tom Debris, who has again done a lot of work on this over the last weeks and months. And of course I'd have arrogance mode, but definitely with this project, and indeed all the projects that I work on, but this one in particular, the phrase "if I have seen far, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants" definitely applies. So everyone that's had a hand, big and small, in the project, thank you very much indeed. So that's enough of that stuff. So the last release we did was version 2.05a. This one is going to be 2.15a. For those of you that might want to know, the A in this stands for alpha, and that is what we do before beta. So we're still very much in a very early phase of the software for this project. So you might then reasonably ask, well, if 2.05 was the last one, why are we now not on 2.06 for this one? Why is it 2.15? Well, the reason for that comes from, oh, there's some regen. The reason for that comes from the fact that in the intervening period between when we started off from 2.06 to getting to 2.15, there's been a lot of fixes and bug fixes and tweaks and modifications and all this, and in order to keep track of those we have to increase the software version. So that's why we now find ourselves here at 2.15 for the next release. So let's hit some of the big ticket items for you straight away here. The first one, and we're going to experience it again here now, and I'll actually let you know just before it happens. And here it comes. And that was a low to high gear shift. So the first one is going to only pertain to the Lexus GS 450h drivetrain, and that is the implementation of automatic gear shifting. So prior to this, you had 3 choices in the web interface under gearbox control: low, high and auto. But only low and high worked, so you could manually select low or high before setting off on your journey. Auto didn't do anything. Again, following some contributions from the community and people really helping out, and also people like these who don't need to worry about speed limits. That's helpful, guys. Do I need to worry about speed limits? I think I do, really. Anyway, we now have automatic shifting. It is a very basic form. So if we select auto under gearbox control, now we have a Lexus GS 450h drivetrain as we do in this vehicle, then when we set off from a stop, we will automatically, hence the term auto, be in low gear. When we reach 7,000 mg2 RPM, we will then upshift to high gear. On the way back down, as we drive along and we start slowing down, when we reach 2,000 mg2 RPM, as we slow down, we will then downshift to low gear. Now, this is the only consideration that is taken into account, folks. We have some roadworks ahead, so we'll have a downshift coming up for you. And this will be a downshift under regen as well. So I'm going to release my throttle. And we're going to start bringing on the brakes. There's our regen, and there's a downshift. So, this is the only thing that we consider as a parameter at the minute, because this is a very basic implementation that we consider for automatic gear shifting. So there's no consideration of vehicle speed, load, anything like that. So you need to keep that in your mind. So unlike even a kind of old school traditional automatic that would have had a vacuum controller, there's no way at the moment within the firmware, within 2.15, to estimate engine load, as it were, as a parameter for shifting. But we will get to that, folks. But suffice it to say, I've been driving around now for about the last 10 days. I've been trying to do a lot of driving in this vehicle. And I have obviously had it in automatic. We've made some little tweaks to make the shift point smoother, make the transition smoother, the torque reduction and application smoother. During one of the versions, it was quite harsh to the point that it would actually bark the tires when you upshifted. So that's fortunately tuned out now. So that's gear shifting in the Lexus GS 450h. Now the next big one that I know a lot of folks have been talking about and asking about almost since the project started has been regen, or regenerative braking, to give it its full term. I suppose my approach to it, I think, raised a few hackles along the way. I'm not a huge fan of it, but that's my own personal feeling. It's, you know, it's not something that's in any way influencing what I decide to put in the software, because I know it is something that people, not just, it's not just on the would be nice list. There are definitely practical applications for it. It's just whenever I mentioned it in the past, I would just get swamped by these comments and posts from people who you know seem to think that I'm some kind of a coin-operated feature producer, or the people that contribute to the project are. But anyway, enough about that. So, 2.15 is the first implementation of regenerative braking in the ZombieVerter VCU. This is not quite easy as it sounds to do, primarily because the ZombieVerter has, even as of now, quite an array of different drivetrains that it can control. And each of those drivetrains has its own quirks and its own ways that it likes to do things without getting into a whole bunch of technical detail. So getting a regen implementation that would work smoothly across those various drivetrain systems is not trivial at all. And my approach to it up to this point was that I would rather have no regen at all than bad regen. And by bad regen, what I mean is any feature of the VCU that makes the vehicle unpredictable. Because it's unpredictability that's going to lead to problems, accidents, whatever you want to call it. So once, and it was particularly Tom came on board for this because he brought his experiences in, and he said to me, look, we're going to do regen in this. And I thought, okay, I mean, I'll test it. At the minute, I have 3 vehicles that we test that are road legal at the minute, that I drive regularly. Now keep in mind that the Panzer, which has the Tesla large drive unit in it, the open inverter board handles the regen in that vehicle, so it's not really relevant for regen testing. So I've performed regen testing in the E39 here with the Lexus 450h drivetrain, and in the Grey Goose, which is the E46 Touring, with the wow, how many lads does it take to stand around smoking? Quite a few, it seems. So anyway, the Goose has Nissan Leaf Gen 1 motor and 6-speed manual gearbox in it. So that is my test beds. There have been other people testing along the way as well, and obviously with the release now there's going to be even more testing. So why is regen so tricky to do? Well, it's easy to do badly. It's tricky to do it well. I don't really want this video to turn into a big long thing about mats and motors and how we handle various things like that, because quite frankly, okay, to be quite honest, I don't know enough about that to be able to speak to it. But what I do know is that we need our vehicles to behave in a predictable fashion. So I've been going out testing, and Tom's been doing tweaking, and we've been slowly getting this dialed in to a point that it works well. So at the moment, if we look through our parameter list, upshift, if we look through our parameter list, you're going to find some new parameters in there. Oh, this guy doesn't need to worry about speed limits either. It is a fellow BMW driver though, so figures. Anyway, you're going to find a parameter called regen max, and it's going to have a parameter span between 0 and minus 30. So what does that mean? Well, that means that whatever value that you set in there is a percentage of the maximum motor torque that it will apply in off throttle regen or accelerator pedal regen. So as an example, in this vehicle, I have regen max set to minus 5%. So when I take my foot off the throttle, as I'm doing now, I get a very small little bit of regen, which is equivalent to engine braking. We've set minus 30 as a maximum for that parameter at the minute, because otherwise you could seriously, and woo, let's do some high speed, and there we go, and there was a nice upshift at relatively high throttle. So we've set that to minus 30% maximum. What I would advise you folks to do is, if you want to use throttle pedal regen, start off at a low figure, see how your vehicle behaves, and work from there. Now, what also we have is regen brake, and regen brake is also from 0 to minus 30 parameter, and that is the maximum percentage of the motor's available torque that we apply as regen when the brake light signal is applied to the VCU, so when we press the brake pedal. And what affects both of those parameters is the regen ramp rate. So if you look down in your parameters, you'll find one, and it has a value of, I believe, between 0.1, so 0.1 and 100 as percentage per 10 milliseconds. So what does that mean? Well, it means, for example, if I slam the throttle closed as I'm driving along, this is the rate at which that whatever that I've set in my regen pedal is applied. So it's the rate at which regen kind of pushback, as it were, is applied. And again, what I recommend to folks is setting that to its lowest possible value of 0.1 and work away with that until you find a value that is comfortable for you, suits your needs, and suits your vehicle and desired performance. So for example, in this vehicle here, I have regen brake set to minus 20%, and I have regen pedal set to minus 5%. and I've my regen ramp rate set to its slowest possible at 0.1% per 10 milliseconds. So that means that when I let the pedal off, I get a reasonably small little bit of regen in there, which is approximate to engine braking, and that's what suits me. Your mileage in this case will most definitely vary. So if you take nothing else away from this video, take away from small starts and small increments, and do as much testing at low speeds as you can. Now you might think, well, you know, should I not be testing at higher speeds? And yeah, by all means. However, it's very easy to implement regen and to have it function when you have a vehicle at speed, because the mass and the inertia of the vehicle act as a kind of a damper for any oscillations or other problems that you might have in there. The best way to test regen, believe it or not, and to prove that you have it working very well, is to try to regen a completely unloaded motor. It's very hard to do. For people that have experimented with OEM motors, so pulling motors and inverters out of cars and getting them working on the bench, some people are rather surprised when the motor, either with the application of no throttle, accelerates to maximum speed and or starts oscillating, so the shaft starts rocking back and forth, and sometimes it'll even build up a little bit of a feedback loop and start jumping around on the bench, and people get really surprising. Oh, but you know, this is a motor from a, you know, such and such EV, and should it not be behaving much differently? I must be doing something wrong, or we're sending the wrong CAN commands to it, or whatever else. Not quite. The reason that happens is because the regen implementation that has been put into the OEM inverter is based upon the premise that at the very, very least you have gearbox and wheels and brake rotors and whatever else attached, if not a complete vehicle. So it's quite easy for the motor then to basically oscillate or hit full speed while just sitting in an unloaded condition. So for folks that wish to really kind of try to dial the thing in, one test that you can do is to jack up the driven wheels of your vehicle and try to get it to a point so that when you apply regen, we come to a complete stop. We don't oscillate back and forth and things like that. The other parameter that you're going to find in there, and I must confess, I do apologize, I forget the name of it, but it's going to be called something like min regen RPM or regen RPM or something like that. And it has a value, I believe, between 0 and 500. And what that basically means is that is the cutoff RPM below which no regen will be applied. And that comes back to my commentary there about regenning an unloaded motor and avoiding any unnecessary oscillations. So we basically have that value in there so that we don't try to regen when we're at very low motor RPMs. I would suggest leaving that at its default value, which, if memory serves, is 200 RPM. But again, that's something that you can, of course, experiment with. But the previous caveats apply. Small amounts, be careful. So, moving on from regen to the next area that we have a big fix in here in this version is the throttle ramp. So the throttle ramp is basically the reverse of the regen ramp that we discussed, and it's been there since the earliest versions of the VCU firmware, and it is has an array of between 0.1 and 100 as percentage points per 10 milliseconds. And what that is quite simply the ramp rate at which, if I slam the throttle pedal fully down, that it applies the maximum available motor torque. For example, if I have that set to 100% and I slam the throttle full on, I will ask the motor for maximum available torque in 10 milliseconds. Wouldn't recommend that, by the way. But anyhow, that parameter was not actually working, folks. And it wasn't working because of one error in the software. One line, one piece. And that's now fixed. So the throttle ramp now works as it should. All the way between 0.1% in 10 milliseconds and indeed 100% in 10 milliseconds. So you might find now that whatever values that you had previously in there may need to be changed. But those two ramp rates, your throttle application ramp rate and your regen ramp rate, are two that work fairly close in hand, or hand in hand, for making the vehicle feel the way that you want it to. So, next up, we have for BMW vehicles now, or at least, actually all the BMW vehicles now, we have can, wake and sleep implemented in the VCU. So what does that mean? Well, basically up to this version, the VCU still transmitted CAN messages on the vehicle CAN bus, even when it was in the switched off state. But now what happens is that when the vehicle goes into sleep mode, so all of its body and other functions shut down, the VCU will follow suit and stop transmitting CAN. Now, the current hardware in the VCU does not implement a hardware sleep, so just do keep that in mind. And then when we get back in the vehicle wakes up, or we turn on the key, the VCU then begins retransmitting CAN and starts interacting on the vehicle CAN bus as normal. So it does mean now that your vehicle can go asleep, which will reduce drain on your 12-volt battery when the vehicle is not in use. What else do we have? We have extra CAN bus based gear shifters. We have the two Jaguar Land Rover ones that Tom worked on. They're now implemented and I believe tested in this firmware version. So we now have, wait for it, 3 CAN-based shifters that we can use with the VCU as of this firmware version. Believe it or not, sitting on my desk at home, I have the MGZS shifter that I hope to work on, but that's obviously not implemented in this firmware version. So there's a few other small things in there. I'm probably forgetting a few of them. As I say, this is more of an off-the-cuff video that I have for you today, but I did particularly want to talk to you about the gear shifting and the regen in particular. I think we have a good implementation now. There will be tweaks, there will be modifications. The more feedback that we get in there, the useful feedback that we get in there with data, the more we can do to improve upon the situation. So let me see what else we had in this version. Covered regen, covered the shifting, covered the can, wake and sleep, covered the gear shifters. Oh yeah. So the other thing as part of regen, and I think I need to get rid of this guy. Oh really? Really? Okay, you want to, okay. Sorry buddy, but VW haven't built something that'll take the lanyard. Now let's get some regen in there. Now, as part of the regen parameters, we have a section under the I/O now, so the outputs. We have one for regen brake. So what that will do for us is it will provide a brake light control output from the VCU that we can select at what percentage of regen that we would like the brake light to be applied. Now that's only obviously applicable if you're using throttle pedal regen. Obviously if you're using brake pedal regen, then when you press the brake lights come on anyway, so you've got that covered. So that's an important one, glad I didn't forget that. Folks, I think that's probably going to be most, if not all, of the important stuff for 2.15. When you do load up a new firmware version, it's very important that you reset the VCU, particularly if you're using a Toyota drivetrain. So what do I mean by resetting it? That seemed to cause some confusion in the last release. What it simply means is good old Microsoft turn the power off and turn the power on again. Oh wow, we got some nice black smoke out of this guy. Pleasant. Breathe it deeply. Those carbon particles lining my lungs. So it means you turn the power off, count to 5 or 10 or whatever your favorite number is, but there's no need to count to 10 million, by the way. Then turn the power back on, and by the power I mean the 12 volt supply to the VCU. Alright. I think that's it. It is a nice day for a drive actually, so I'm glad we had that much. We did cover in 2.05, we did fix the problem that Greg had identified with the Prius drivetrain that was due to the misinterpretation of the inverter heatsink temperature. So we got that fixed. Yeah, I think we're pretty much covered for this version. Oh, it's our VW, or in this case Audi friends again. Anyway, I'm trying to keep my, road rage in check for the purposes of the video. I'm going to say that's it, folks. This video, I won't be doing any editing on it. I'm going to be just uploading this straight from the phone today. So there'll be a link in the video description to the GitHub repo where you can download 2.15 and indeed see the source code and whatever else if you so wish. This is a fully open source project. Newcomers, again, I definitely recommend Good Enough Garage. Greg has been doing wonderful work on the documentation from a user's perspective. I know me, I tend to ramble, I tend to go off on tangents, tend to want to ram Audis off the road. And things like that, so it kind of makes it a little bit less understandable for some folks. So definitely do check out Greg's channel, and there will be a link in the description to that. And indeed, over on the repo, check out the release notes, because there is bits that I'm forgetting in here. So do check out the release notes, and I'll put a link to this video in the release notes as well there, so hopefully we can kind of cross-link as much of this stuff as we can. One little tidbit of information just before we wrap up. About a month or maybe even 6 weeks ago now, I crossed a rather interesting milestone, and that milestone being that we decided to come to a complete stop randomly in the middle of the road for no reason. Okay, nice. Thank you for the brake check, or the regen check for that matter. Okay, fine. Maybe he just wanted me to demonstrate another gear shift. Oh, that was it. Just wanted me to demonstrate a gear shift. Here it comes. Ooh. All right, gear shift done. Anyway. Yeah, I crossed a little milestone there about 4 to 6 weeks ago. That is, I had sold, believe it or not, 1,000 ZombieVerter VCUs. I couldn't quite believe it myself, but there it is. Now that's 1,000 that I have personally sold. That's to say nothing about folks that have gone off and made their own from the design files and maybe given, you know, other ones away to friends or family or whatever else. But yeah, that's about it. It's big release, and I'm quite happy with it at this point. Obviously, user feedback will be quite interesting now over the next weeks and months, and hopefully people will find it useful. So, folks, I'm going to leave it there. Now, this video is going to be exceedingly long, exceedingly boring, and exceedingly random in a way. And no cats in it, but don't worry, I have a video coming up that has cats in it. Because I know that is important, particularly for clicks. Right. As always, don't forget to give this one the old thumbs down. Don't share it with your friends, family, loved ones, random strangers, business acquaintances, because they won't want to see you anymore. And until next time, there really is only one thing we can say, and that is happy regenning, folks.